Yes, Percy, welcome.
Thank you.
We want to have a little discussion this morning about Chelsea and then Pochettino. Um, he was one of the people we spoke about highly in most of the content we released earlier, especially prior to the season beginning. And one of the issues that we spoke about was the fact that people felt that this was going to be a testing enough project for him. And then it also gave him another chance at redemption because we all know the things that happened with PSG and subsequently most of the superstars falling off with him and he losing the dressing room eventually, had to be fired by PSG eventually. We also know of some of the things that happened in the consideration for appointment at Manchester United. Word has it that it was a straight fight between himself and Eric Ten Hag, and eventually Ten Hag had to be pushed for that job. So we want to place the emphasis on Pochettino this morning. We want to analyze what it is that has gone wrong at Chelsea and what it is that Pochettino has to do to make sure that he turns around the season of Chelsea quickly. Because, I mean, people have their assertion that Chelsea season is already done. You understand? Because if you look at how they are struggling to win games, save yesterday's game against Brighton in the Carabao Cup, Chelsea had not scored a goal in so many minutes. They had gone so many matches, 3+ matches without scoring a goal. And so we want to push the emphasis and the focus on Mauricio Pochettino this morning and then look at how Chelsea can quickly turn around this whole mess they find themselves in.
Okay. And then you know where to even start from. Okay, now, if we check Pochettino and his appointment, he came in at a time when last season we all know what Lampard took the team through, and they were rarely winning matches, and they were also not scoring a lot of goals. Now, when he came in, I'll first address a few issues that I think are not really his fault. And the first one has to do with injuries. Because starting the season, one of the main acquisitions that were actually made last season, even before the season ended, was Christopher Nkunku. And he was one of the people that was touted because he actually won the Golden Boot with RB Leipzig in Germany. So he was to come in and
Be the main source of firepower.
And during the preseason, he got an injury. Apart from that, a few players that were purchased had to come in with it. Romeo Lavia was supposed to arguably play alongside Moises Caicedo in the midfield. He has an injury. And you also have Reece James, their captain, who in the first game we really saw what he brought on board, also has an injury. So if you are checking their injury list, you will get to know that the mainstays or the people who were actually supposed to drive the team are having injuries, and you can't really use that as an excuse. Of course, you can't use that as an excuse as a coach. That is why you are a manager. You should always have contingencies. But I am talking about the circumstances beyond his control. Number two has to be the purchases. Obviously, we know of the time of Abramovich, and during Abramovich's time, there wasn't a gap between the manager and Abramovich. Although Abramovich, there were times that there were players that he wanted, irrespective of whatever the coach, but it was always like, oh, the coach wants this player. He tells Abramovich, Chelsea goes in, then straight fights, they bully their way, and they get it. But we've realized that with this current Chelsea, since Todd Bowley and his conglomerate took over, it's more or less like a lot of even the players, they started buying them even before Poch came in. And the last time I remember there was an interview, and one of the journalists asked Poch about Malan Sarr. And he was like, Malan who? I was like, Malan Sarr. It was, yes, he's your player on loan. Then he looked at his assistant just to verify. He is not even aware of the existence of Malan Sarr. So the player purchases had become more or less like, if you are comparing his time at Tottenham and his time at PSG, at least with Tottenham,
it was controlled.
But with Chelsea, Look at the number of defensive midfielders they
No,
bought.
let me hold you right there. Would you want to say that then Chelsea were very unfair to Graham Potter? Because I remember us talking extensively about this particular issue. You walk into the dressing room of Chelsea today, there's a whole congregation. There's a whole congregation. And I'm sure that with all of the players that Chelsea have bought, realistically, they can put up 3 teams.
Yeah.
You understand? 3 standing 11s. So how do you control this as a manager? Because listen, these are not players who have come in for £2 million, £3 million. These are players Chelsea have paid over the top for. And so if you have £50 million, £60 million, £70 million sitting in that dressing room and not playing, you definitely have an issue of player struggle in that dressing room.
Yeah. And as a result of this, you realize that Chelsea is failing to have a starting 11. It's like every player came in at a price. And the unfortunate thing is that this one, probably my Chelsea fans would have an issue with. There is no A-lister in the whole dressing room.
That's quite arguable. That's quite arguable.
Are you going to talk about Sterling?
Well, I think
You from the goalkeeper.
Well, I think Sterling is past his prime.
Okay,
I honestly
so
think.
from their goalkeeper.
But by thinking Kuku is an A-lister, I think that if Chelsea gets their form right,
So if you are
Enzo
taking-
Fernandez should be an A-lister.
Kofi,
I think
please.
on the evidence
We
of
don't-
what we have
no,
seen,
Kofi, listen.
Caicedo should be
Wait,
an
please,
A-lister.
Kofi.
I mean,
The very-
Reece
no, the
James,
very fact
Reece
that-
James should be an A-lister. I mean,
Kofi.
even the left fullback who is injured, you understand?
Ben Chilwell.
Chilwell should be an A-lister.
Please. The very fact that the player has been bought for that price, Enzo Fernandez, he's now played a full season and a half. In fact, a full season and maybe 3 months in Europe. The only time he played half his time, 6 months at Benfica.
Yeah.
The only time you go to know him is at the World Cup, and that does not make you an A-lister. We don't talk about Sterling. We are talking about Caicedo. We all know what took the Caicedo bid to the 100 million. Tell me one season that Reece James, I wouldn't probably go that far. One season that, Reece James has been the topmost player at Chelsea. Okay, let's say first 3 players. Even the season that they even won the Champions League, Reece James was very inconsistent. He's an injury-prone player.
Well, I don't want us to sway, but nobody can convince me Reece James is not world class. Listen, and I think that people need to watch this and listen carefully. We have come from a certain generation of players, and then we have moved into this generation of players. Yes, in the past we could talk about the Maldinis, we could talk about the Roberto Carloses, we could talk about the
Ashley Cole.
Albertinis, the Ashley Coles, the Gary Nevilles, all of those great fullbacks. But you see, now,
Did you mention Gary Neville?
yes, Gary Neville was a decent enough right fullback.
You mentioned Carlos and you bring in Gary Neville.
Oh, come on! I mean, I just wanted to play the devil's advocate, but we have come from a particular generation of players. I think that in the generation of past, we had proper footballers. You understand? These days, we do not have a lot of proper footballers. But in the context of what we have now, Reece James, if he's able to stay fit, I think that he could be.
He has never been fit.
But what do Chelsea do to remedy the situation?
Now,
What does Pochettino need to do?
The only thing that Chelsea has to do is to accept the reality. You see, it is one thing that when a team is able to do, it's able to put them in the right position to be able to make up for the best. They don't have to fight the fact that they are in their all-time low. You see, that is what makes teams bounce back from whatever situation they find themselves in. Real Madrid won the Champions League 5 straight, then they won another in 16. They didn't win again, almost 30 years. Then they got to a time they had to accept that this is not the Real Madrid that we got to know. So they have to build from a certain level to another level. Now, in quotes, this is the level of Chelsea. This had been the level of Chelsea way before Abramovich came in. Of course, once in a while, they will win an FA Cup, they will win a Europa, then they would be away for a very long time. Now, with all that money gone, you see, Abramovich did not just bring money. He didn't just throw money around. Abramovich had a team of people that's controlled, and they were able to direct him as to how to spend it. But this is a businessman who came in. He knows nothing about football. He walks into negotiations himself, and we see that the kind of of products he brings in, and the deals he signs players for 8 years, 7 years, 8 years, all because of amortization. And you realize that he just wants to make the best out of the business. So Chelsea should accept, the fans should accept, this is an all-time low. No amount of money pumped in. It is not about the quality. As of now, how many players would even be willing to play for Chelsea like before? Because of the all-time, and that is the level that teams like Liverpool went in. United is now going there, coming back, but at least within some time they try to push up. But with this Chelsea, since 2021 that they won the Champions League, that they started with the whole Russian issue and whatever stuff, you don't see anything like a progression, because with the players they bought, if they want to revamp, are they going to sell off all of these players? Because these players are burdened. With respect to Nicolas Jackson, he's a player that had just a little over, 10 goals or 11 goals last season. He had not really had mainstay in Europe for long. Christopher Nkunku is injury prone. Sterling is past his prime. Mudryk is here to score. And since Mudryk came in, someone said that Joao Felix left Atletico Madrid, came to Chelsea, scored, left, went to Barca, and is here to score. So you realize that Chelsea, it's about time. I think one of the things they need a sporting director. They need a sporting director. At least for whatever that Granovskaya did, you may talk about some of the bad things that actually paid it, but at least there was some good. There was Peter Cech, there was Michael Emenalo. They helped in a lot of purchases. Then they set maybe a 5-6 year project like Liverpool did in 2015 when they appointed Klopp. They started on the low. They started putting in 1, 2, 3 players, and by the 5th year, Liverpool had won the league and had won the Champions League. For me, it is not about the buying of players and struggling with other teams just to enforce their mojo that they are also a top team. No, it's a matter of accepting the reality and maybe making some decisions afterwards.
Well, I think that I agree to a large extent with most of the things that Percy, has said about the situation of Pochettino and Chelsea. I think that Pochettino is a very good manager, especially when you look at the profile of players Chelsea have decided to buy now. You realize that if you look at the profile of players Chelsea are pursuing now, these are prospects, like Percy has rightly put it. And there's no better manager in the world than Pochettino. Evidently, some of the best works that he did, we've seen Pochettino at Southampton. We saw him on talents like Sadio Mane. We've seen Pochettino at Tottenham Hotspur. We saw the influence he had on people like Harry Kane, Dele Alli, even this guy Eric Dyer.
There was Massa Charlie.
Exactly. So you look at the cracks of Chelsea players now. I think that once again I agree with what Percy has said. Chelsea needs to allow itself to fall naturally.
Yeah.
Teams have showed that if you try to force the situation, you could end up being in a bigger situation that you find yourself currently in. Manchester United have gone through that particular situation. They've tried to throw money at the situation. It's not remedied the situation. Real Madrid have gone through that patch. Barcelona have gone through that patch. Even the great Bayern Munich have gone through that patch. So I think that the consensus that we are building now is that there needs to be a lot of patience shown. I still believe that Pochettino is the right manager, but Pochettino also as a manager needs to take some major decisions. And two of the biggest decisions he needs to do: one, trim that squad. I do not care who has been bought with what amount.
Yeah.
If the players are unfit for his tactics and for the long-term interest of the team, I mean, cut your losses and then throw them out of that dressing room. Two, I think that Pochettino also needs to be consistent with what it is that he wants to do with Chelsea. There needs to be a clearer plan as to the direction that Chelsea wants to follow. And I think that we'll leave the conversation out for you at home. What is it that Chelsea and Pochettino need to do to remedy the situation? Does Chelsea get Pochettino fired? Do Chelsea throw more money at the situation? Kindly subscribe, share, and like our post to all of your major social media pages. And as always, we are shooting from the Shocks Hub at the Takrady Mall. If you want some of the very best food, some of the very best delicacies there is to eat in the city of Takrady, you can always locate Shocks up at the mall, Takrady Mall, and then walk in and get for yourself everything that you want to get. Until we meet the next time, keep sharing. This is Sports 101.